Hello, and welcome to What on Earth, the podcast of the Environmental Investigation Agency, or EIA. In 2021, EIA unveiled our first of its kind environmental crime tracker, an open access online tool to help analyse and better understand wildlife and forest crime around the world. Last year we updated it to incorporate information on the illegal trade in climate-harming refrigerant gases, and recently we've expanded its capabilities even further with the addition of a new prosecutions dashboard. I'm Paul Newman, EIA's Senior Press and Communications Officer, and joining me today from our Intelligence and Investigations team are Data Manager Royce and Data Analyst Shaliza Malik to talk about the tracker and the value of its new prosecutions feature. Royce, Shaliza, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to share your thoughts with us.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, and let's hope we can make people understand this. Royce, perhaps you can start us off with a general introduction to the tracker and its various dashboards. A lot of people won't have seen this tool, so could you tell us what exactly it is and what it's used for?
Sure. The crime tracker is a global tool for people who are interested and are involved in combating illegal wildlife trade. We can think of NGOs, policymakers, think tanks, and academics who would like to use the tool. So right now, the crime tracker is like an umbrella of a number of dashboards on the species level. So we have elephant ivories, which talks about like how the seizure of ivory, and in that we can actually estimate how many elephant was killed. And then we have rhino horns to see the rhino horn trade. Asian big cats, we can see that how the seizure, whether it's come from a captive or is a wild caught Asian big cats that got seized at the border. And we have pangolins, which is a dashboard which talks about the seizure, whether it's a pangolin scales or the whole body of a pangolin, because people use pangolins, either the scale or the whole body for consumptions. And then we expand to something about the refrigerant gas, because we right now there's upcoming protocol in order to control refrigerant gas. And we also have dashboards about other things, about the trade routes and maps, which is where the data came from. And we try to understand how this illegal trades happening around the world.
So just to add some more information to what you just spoke about, Royce, EIA has been collecting and analysing this wildlife crime data for a while now. So we wanted to make the open source information that we had useful for everyone, because it would have been a shame for the data that we had put our effort into collecting for it to just sit there and after we were done with it, which is why the crime tracker came about to be in the first place, to act as this global tool that provides open access data and the analytical dashboards that Royce has just mentioned.
Excellent. And just to paint a picture in the mind's eye for our listeners, because I'm sure most of them or many of them won't have actually visited the tracker, could you talk us through visually what you see when you're going into it for the first time, and if you like, give us a sort of an example exercise as to how you would get information from it?
Sure. So if you come to our website, and then you will find our crime tracker, and the home screen of the crime tracker is tiles of different dashboards with photos. So in this case, easily, like if you can see elephants, the tiles that would go into the elephant's dashboard. And if you go to the rhino picture, you click on it, then you will have everything about the rhino dashboards and so on and so forth. And right now, we have the prosecution data dashboard that is now, the tile itself is actually sit on the bottom middle part of it. So when you click on it, you will come to our new dashboard.
Excellent stuff. And Shaliza, can you tell us what kind of data is collected by EIA for the tracker, and where do we actually source that information from?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, given the nature of EIA and the purpose of the crime tracker that we just spoke about, we look a lot at the wildlife crime data. So this includes incident types such as wildlife seizures, theft, so that's like stockpile thefts, illegal logging, and also illegal fishing. So Royce mentioned our focal species already. We also, when there are additional species that have been seized alongside our focal species, we also categorize them into our database. But yeah, as I said, only when they're seized alongside our focal species. So we also look at environmental crime that you mentioned, Paul, in your introduction, like illegal refrigerant gas trafficking. So it's not just wildlife crime. So moving on to the data that's actually stored on the crime tracker, that is sourced from publicly available information. So everything on there is open source. We use media articles from global news outlets that are reporting in several languages. We also look at reports from governments and also press releases from agencies and customs agencies as well. We also look at non-governmental sources like academic papers. And one important source of information we have is that we share and receive data with other civil society organizations who are all acknowledged in our agency contributor field. So I guess if the listener would want to know more information about who is contributing into our tracker, then we do have more details on this and also our other sources. So all of this information can be found in the Crime Tracker's user manual, which can be found in the homepage. Also, just whilst we're speaking of the homepage, users can also go on there to request any of the raw data that is open source that we are feeding into the Crime Tracker using the request form.
Oh, that's sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, go on.
I'll say that's really helpful. I mean, if it will help
Yeah.
people, when I post this up, I'll actually add the link to the tracker landing page as well.
Amazing, perfect. So one last thing that I'll mention about the raw data is because of how we are collecting and compiling our data, it's important to consider that it's not an exhaustive data set, and it likely doesn't represent like a complete picture. So it'll only show a fraction of the actual wildlife crime activity that is going on. This is because the collection of the data that's fed into the crime tracker is very reliant on EAA staff capacity and also other external factors like reporting rates, reporting biases in different species or even on different geographic regions. Also, we found that data accessibility is quite difficult. I think we'll cover that in the prosecution data side of things more. And I think the rate of reported seizures is also subject to national law enforcement efforts and their effectiveness, as well as how they're publicizing incidents. And so consequently, this then affects the national media interest on how incidents are reported. So that's one of the big challenges that we have in data collection. This obviously isn't like a EIA specific challenge, but one thing that we are trying to do to overcome this is that we regularly exchange data sets with other organizations who are collecting similar data to fill any of the gaps that we have in data collection. So I only mention this because we do welcome any input from others in helping to update our records. So if anyone listening would like to contribute towards our database, then please do get in touch.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. I'll put an appropriate address in along with the link as well.
Perfect.
Royce, given it's already quite extensive in terms of the area covered by the tracker, why have we now created a new prosecutions dashboard? What do you think the value of that will be?
I think it's quite monumental because what happened is when we see the crime tracker is about the contraband, basically is the species, and what's less we have to do is wanted to know the strength, or sometimes people usually say it's the deterrence effect of prosecutions. And now we have used the three pilot countries in order to show that which these countries are Nigeria, Malaysia, and Vietnam. And because we have, because we collect this data and analysis and to put it into a dashboard, we found that what we say the post-incident investigations on wildlife seizure are not that much, and also you see it's like a funnel. So it's like after a seizure, maybe a certain people got arrested, but ultimately maybe much less of them will get prosecuted. And also that we wanted to know that the prosecution outcome, because we wanted to know the sentencing, if it is proportional to the crime they committed. And also, the way we see prosecution is also a way we can see one more dimension from the country efforts, because we have seizure is show of enforcement strength, but with prosecution we also see the strength of the jurisdictions on combating illegal wildlife trade, particularly like the judicial system, the prosecutor, the defense counsel, and the judge, everything that happened in the courtroom, the legal system, how the law was written in order to criminalize, or how to give sentencing to perpetrator, and the rule of law from the jurisdictions. And with that, I think the aggregation of these information, because if we have information from one country, and then we have much more coming along, so that we can start to have an aggregation of understanding how prosecution looks like in a number of countries, or maybe on the global level even, to understand how prosecution is part of the game in combating illegal wildlife trade.
I just want to add something in there as well. I think it's important to make a distinction that having a high number of conviction rates for wildlife crime doesn't necessarily translate to successfully dealing with wildlife crime. So I think it's important to make that distinction as well, that we're seeing a rise in conviction and sentencing, but it doesn't mean that's necessarily the right way to deal with wildlife crime. So we just want to make that distinction there as well.
Is the implication in that the higher number of prosecutions might simply be relating to, if you like, the foot soldiers in illegal wildlife trade, rather than the people who are actually higher up and organising it?
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it, and I think it's important to have that distinction between having just having that prosecution data. It doesn't translate into successfully dealing with illegal wildlife trade, or something like that.
Indeed. Perhaps you can tell us what kind of new data was actually collected for this addition to the tracker.
So just in addition to what Royce mentioned as well, I think just from looking at the beginning of the project, the story that's reported in media articles often stops at the arrest, as Royce mentioned, and reporting isn't really followed through because there isn't that much appetite maybe in conviction details, unless it is a big case, especially compared to other news stories that might be more compelling that are coming out at the same time. So because of this incomplete storytelling, we found that the number of reported convictions in the seizure data generally was way less than the number of reported seizures that we had. So this discrepancy was quite challenging in itself. And I would say that it meant we were starting from a fairly low baseline of data. So moving on to the actual data collection, I think when you say that you have 3 countries to focus on, it sounds like that would be fairly straightforward. But actually, it highlighted to us that each country presents its own unique challenges. So, for example, creating the standardized fields that we had to record the different structures of the legislation from each of the 3 target countries was quite difficult. I'm sure Royce would agree there. And the way
Indeed.
that the court case data was accessible across the different countries was quite different, and that meant that we had to apply 3 different strategies for each of the different countries, which was a challenge that I think we were anticipating, but we didn't really anticipate to the level that we had it. So just looking more specifically at our target countries, so court cases in Vietnam are easier to access remotely than those in Nigeria, just for a comparison. Vietnam have a few different portals available that are easy to search through. especially if you speak Vietnamese. If you don't speak Vietnamese like us, then it is time consuming translating the different sections of the website and also the court case documents. So if you're applying like Google Translate or any other automatic translation tool to a website, sometimes it glitches and it won't pick up all the different sections of the website or the document. And so thankfully for us, we had an amazing consultant who could speak Vietnamese. And she basically went through all these portals and she found us new ones as well. So she used Vietnamese search terms, and she also had extensive knowledge of the Vietnamese legislation, which was quite useful for us. And it saved us a lot of time as well, because if I had done it with no Vietnamese skills, then that would have taken me a very long time. So if you compare this to Nigeria, you're not able to access court cases online, and permissions to access the data has to be sought through writing to relevant agencies and departments, which can be quite time consuming. So the challenges that we had in Nigeria was very different to those in Vietnam. For our third country, Malaysia, we were quite lucky to collaborate with our project partner, Justice for Wildlife Malaysia. And they devoted a lot of time and effort in finding prosecution cases in Malaysia. But however, the challenges that they faced through the feedback that they gave back to us was that different law enforcement agencies hold records differently, and there isn't really a shared location or a centralized database, I guess, where people are recording court cases in a standardized manner. And I think gaining the correct permissions and cross-referencing across different sources, I think that's something that they found quite challenging, and finding accuracies in the data and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I think in terms of maintaining as well, on the prosecution side of things, I think we're hoping that with more funding, we're able to add more countries to the dashboard. I think one thing that we all know is that finding this funding is quite hard. And also, now that the prosecution fields are very much a part of our data entry forms, any source prosecution data relating to our target countries that are added into our database will be automatically fed into the prosecution dashboard. So we're hoping that will help with maintaining it in some way.
Excellent, thank you. And Royce, we did touch on this somewhat at the outset. In terms of what the practical value of the tracker and its the information it contains, what would people typically be able to use it for? And in a way, what will be the benefit of adding the prosecutions dashboard?
Sure. I mean, what happened is that we wanted to create a dashboard so that people can contextualize that how many prosecution is related to illegal wildlife trade. And in that, we can able to see how many people in between different countries are prosecuted and also related which kind of illegal wildlife trade products. So for example, in the prosecution tracker dashboard, we actually have like 40 to 50% of the space with a visual of a map, so that you can see the bigger the bubble, we have more data about the prosecutions. And we also have a ribbon graph on below that we can see which is actually a stacked bar chart to see different components of the illegal wildlife trade per year and how it's changed over time, so that we can able to see how prosecutions are related to different species category. And along there, I think what Shaliza says is something we also wanted to emphasize, that prosecution alone does not able to see the whole picture of it. But nonetheless, we wanted to show the proportion, like how many people got arrested and how many people got convicted. So we have a pie chart, a donut chart to show that. And also because we start to have more data about prosecution in 3 countries right now, we are able to categorize this into charge categories, so that we can start to understand what kind of legislation, what kind of charge was given to the person. And then we have some numbers to show that, like, out of so many seizure incidents, how many of them are got to prosecution stage. And we also wanted to know, okay, if that person or so and so, what is the aggregator, what is the imprisonment or what's the sentencing or fine that was given. So these are the things that we got interested into understanding how prosecution come into play after a seizure happened in order to combat illegal wildlife trade as part of the piece of a jigsaw puzzle of how we combat illegal wildlife trade. So that's how we wanted to understand.
Excellent, thank you. And who do you think this tracker would be of particular use for? Are we thinking about other researchers like yourselves, or are we talking about journalists, NGOs, governments? Who would we want to be using it?
Yeah, over the years, EIA has been got requests from other organizations for sharing data, and if you wanted to put into segments, we see other NGOs, in environmental NGOs. We have policymakers, think tanks, academics, who each of them actually playing their part in combating illegal wildlife trade. Either you are within the government or the jurisdiction, try to understand how to contextualize, or academics wanted to understand, like through data over the years, how the effectiveness or how these prosecutions or other seizures come into play in combating illegal wildlife trade. And I think most importantly as well is that sometimes it's just the policymaker, so that we can start to understand each piece of this data and how to provide a better policy on cropping illegal wildlife trade in future. So these are some of the people, because we know who data we requested, asked from, and we also asked them for data. And over the years, we know that there's a flow of data, and we've tried to create new tools for people can easily come to our website and check and to see for themselves. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Can I also just add in some more things about the tracker? I think one thing that Royce put a lot of effort into designing was the quick analysis in the left-hand side pane. So it's just some text which is automated based on the filters that you select, and I think that's quite useful for our users to refer to for some quick analysis. In addition to the analysis on the left-hand side, we also have some category of charges that we came up with. For example, illegal harvest or unlawful possession of protected species, illegal transportation, trafficking. So these are just categories that we came up with. So we were looking at legislation across our 3 target countries, and we were thinking of a way that we can make it easier to have like a standardized comparison for our analysis. So that's where those categories have come from. So just wanted to highlight those as well.
Just talk a little bit about the design. So we actually collect a lot of data and on the per charge level, and we actually seeing from this data, we created 5 elements of visuals. Basically, we have maps, we have ribbon graph, pie charts, bar charts, and words. So these are the things that we overlay on the dashboard so people can see the data, and we actually try to utilize as much data as possible into different visualizations. And particularly, I think we also put a lot of emphasis into putting it into different sections. And maybe this is a little bit trivial, but we tend to use a lot of rounded corners of rectangles, so it's more approachable for people to see. In addition, if you see the whole dashboard, there's only one place that's in red color. So that is like one of the things we want to capture people's attention. So that is like the prosecution. And one of the early feedback from our user is saying that the dashboard itself at a glance seems already able to grasp what's about. And then people can start to look into the details and to dig through what the interesting point of the dashboard. So there are a lot of emphasis spending energy on understanding how to design a dashboard so they're easy for the eyes to see, but not too overwhelming.
I guess so. That's inviting to use, and isn't going to terrify people with way too much information up front. Yeah.
Indeed, there's a balance of these elements of data and visualization.
Well, it sounds like an enormous amount of work has gone into this since we started it back in 2021. As a final point, just looking ahead, given how much it's expanded since we launched it, what do you both anticipate will be the next steps for the crime tracker and prosecutions dashboard?
Sure. I think if you see at we are just getting started. I think we have created a framework. It's not just for the three target countries we just mentioned. In fact, the whole framework is fully capable to include all other countries as well. So I think the next step here is to have more data so that we can show more data, and then the data itself will be much more vivid. And the next step here is that we also want to have feedback from users so that we can know what they think about it, to refine this dashboard, and also to create more other tools for people to visualize this information. So yeah, I mean, as what I think Shaliza will talk a lot is about we need more funding. I think there's a more way we can do this better, and there are other ideas in our mind for other dashboards that we try to design.
Yep, I'm I'm always happy to talk about more funding. If anyone has any funding ideas, please. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, I guess I'll just echo everything that Roy said. I think from initial feedback that we've had from other civil society organizations that we work sometimes alongside with, I think the initial feedback has put emphasis on the prosecution dimension of seizures, and I think it would benefit our understanding of what happens after that arrest point or seizure point relating to wildlife crime. Also, just for the tracker, we are hoping to introduce other types of environmental crime. So right now we have refrigerant gases, so we're hoping to introduce more of those crimes. And in the meantime, I guess it's also good to talk about the feedback. So we're always keen to receive feedback on ways that we can improve the crime tracker and our dashboards. And also, if anyone has any ideas on new visuals that could be of benefit to them, that would be really helpful for us to hear. So feedback forms can be found on our homepage. It would be very helpful to hear from our users on their experience with the crime tracker and also see how we can improve it. So that would be very much appreciated.
Excellent stuff. Well, I'm sure they'll be beating a path to your door once they've tried it out for themselves.
I'm sure.
Well, Royce, Shaliza, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please watch this space for future episodes and check out our website at eaa-international.org to find out more about our work. Thanks for joining us, and wherever you are, stay safe out there.